welcome back to the Moving Pictures Podcast. I'm your host, Katie Holtzclaw, and today we are going to be discussing the Netflix documentary, Britney vs. Spears. So, because this is my first documentary on the podcast, things are going to look a little bit different. Basically, what I did was just take notes as I was watching the documentary, and so I'm kind of going to just go through everything in kind of the sequential order that they discussed in the documentary. So, although I kind of went back and added a few notes, under a certain person or under a certain event that might have come later in the documentary, it's essentially what's told in the documentary. I don't want to just relay information because I feel like you can watch the documentary and get that. I really want to talk about what I think they did really well as storytellers, but also just kind of my opinions on the content because it is about Britney Spears and her life and specifically her conservatorship. And so I just kind of want to go through all of that and go through the motions of just kind of talking about it more in depth than if I were to, recount what I've seen. So, first of all, the director is Erin Lee Carr, and a journalist named Jenny Eliscu. It kind of seems like she was a co-director, but she wasn't, and so it just seems like she was really involved in the process of forming this documentary, researching, getting information, getting footage, etc. She was interviewed as well, which I liked. So one specific thing that really stood out to me while I was watching was that the director and this journalist, Jenny, they were really talking to each other, but filming it. And so as the audience, you get the background of how they got this information or how, how they reacted to this one specific court document or event or etc. So it was really cool to see them also kind of being interviewed. Erin Lee Carr is the director. She just really wanted to tell this story, and it kind of morphed into the story of her conservatorship. And Jenny Eliscu really helped, but Britney was her second ever cover story for Rolling Stone. So it was a big, monumental time in her career that she remembers vividly. In the documentary later on, she explains that she and Britney had a really close relationship, and even other people understood how much Britney loved Jenny. And I'll get to a very monumental point in their relationship in just a minute. Britney is born Britney Jean Spears. She was born on December 21st, 1981. Her career was credited to start at the age of 8. So in an interview, she says that that's when she first realized that she just couldn't stop singing, she wanted to perform, etc. At 16 years old, she was huge. By 2004, she was one of the biggest female-selling artists of her generation. And if you watch the documentary, there's a lot of news coverage and voiceovers just giving so many accolades to Britney as this amazing pop star, this amazing singer, America's sweetheart, this icon of the early 2000s. And that's how I know her. So when in 2004, how old was I? So when she really hit the peak of her career, I was 7. And, fun fact about me, I wasn't allowed to listen to Britney Spears growing up until probably my teenage years, maybe preteen years-ish, because my parents thought she was too risque, and because they said that I really took on the attitudes of people I saw in the media. So if there was ever a snotty girl in a TV show and I watched it, I would become that snotty girl, or I would get the attitude, or I would be disrespectful to my parents because I saw someone on TV do it. So my parents very heavily limited what I was influenced by, we'll just say. And I remember sneakily watching YouTube videos, watching some of Britney's interviews, her music videos specifically, with my friends, and feeling really guilty about it because I knew I wasn't supposed to watch her or listen to her. But I was really enamored by her growing up. I mean, since I was probably 8, 9, since I heard the name Britney Spears. And even, if we were in the car listening to the radio and Britney Spears came on, depending on the song, my mom would probably switch it. And I just think that really drew attention to her name for me because it was, it was restricted. I couldn't listen to her, couldn't watch her, etc. And so, I wanted to more. But I just remember her being such an icon. I mean, I still remember her being such a big deal all the time. And I mean, she shaped what kind of a Y2K icon was for me, definitely. So later that year in 2004, she proposed to Kevin, actually, Kevin Federline, one of her backup dancers, and they quickly had two children. But 2 years later, sadly, Britney filed for divorce. They did have two boys, and in 2007, they kind of entered this really big custody battle. And I think the documentary kind of reiterated this, but I think it was a really big celebrity custody battle. We hadn't really seen a lot of those, and I definitely don't think we saw it in people as young as Britney. But by 2007, they were going through it. The paparazzi was just chasing Britney down, and now Kevin, and now their kids. And it was just a really difficult time, obviously, as Britney, is struggling as a mother and as Kevin is struggling as a father, which, honestly, I care about Britney more than Kevin. Sorry, Kevin. But it clearly took a toll on her because 2007 is kind of when stuff started going downhill. And the paparazzi was just really a big part of Britney's life at this point. And to have this child custody drama, it drew them to her even more. And what's interesting is this is when she met one of the paparazzi that typically would follow her and take her photos. His name is Adnan Galib. And Britney started asking for him, asking other paparazzis where Adnan was. And so all of his, paparazzi friends would call him and say, hey, Britney's asking for you. And they actually started dating. And Adnan is narrating a lot about this aspect of his relationship and his life with Britney in the documentary. So we never really see his face. It's not a face-to-face interview. But we do see photos of him. We see paparazzi footage of him. We see live footage of him, etc. So you really get a sense of who he was and kind of how he was with Britney. But when things started going downhill with her mental health around this time, and with the paparazzi creating so much chaos in her life, Adnan really recalls feeling responsible for her safety and feeling really stressed all the time because he felt like he had to protect her 24/7 because her life was chaos 24/7. And it really blew my mind that all of that was happening to her and people expected her to stay sane. People expected her to just accept this fame and like it. I mean, I don't know, with the paparazzi being so invasive just as an idea in general, but to also see all of this footage of them actually like tormenting Britney, it's really sad, but it sheds light on what her fame actually looked like. And yes, she was making money. Yes, she was performing. Yes, she was writing. But, I think this documentary kind of calls into question, is it worth it? Was she loving her life or was she miserable? I do like in the documentary that they used voice and pictures with the names. So if someone's narrating but he's not on screen, like Britney Spears, then they had a picture of him and they had a sticky with his name on it. And so you got to see this person without actually seeing them. But I really liked it. And at one point you see the director, Aaron, writing the name down on a sticky and sticking it onto the picture. And it was kind of how they organized all of these people as they're planning the documentary. But then they actually got to video it. And so it felt like you were really in on the process that they had for this documentary. I don't know, that was just really cool. And to show people that aren't on camera in, a different medium, like a picture or like a news clipping or like a YouTube video, an interview from the past, I think that was really cool. Oh, also, I loved how they used footage of the computer screen. It looked like kind of a more exaggerated screen recording, but you got to see where the mouse was going. You got to see the folder they were clicking on with the name. You got to see the document name, document title, picture title, whatever. And so you actually got to see kind of what they were looking at and their research and just kind of how the things that they went through for the documentary. Again, it just looked really cool. And to see the process that they were going through, I think was really cool and innovative. And for anyone that couldn't come in person, it was a Zoom interview. We got to see the computer screen, but it wasn't in just a basic, boring way. It was really creative, and I loved that. Again, interviewing the director and the journalist together, the people who created this documentary together in one room, talking to each other, talking to the camera. It was really cool. I really, really, really liked that. How many times can I say really? So I know I'm running through this stuff really quickly, but I want to get a really solid timeline in your head of her life. So there's a lot. It's 7 pages. 7 pages of information. But that's why I'm going fast, because I want to get as much as I can in there. Okay, that was a side note. So back to the timeline. Another really important person in Britney's story was Sam Lufty, and this is the person who is notoriously credited as Britney's downfall, which, wow, harsh. I mean, I wouldn't want to be that person. I wouldn't want to be known as that person. I wouldn't want to be referred to as that person one single time. Like, can you imagine if you're like, oh, that was George Clooney's downfall? You know, his relationship with her was really the turning point in his horrible life. It would be too much for me. But anyway, he defended himself in this, saying, you know, I never did any of the things I was accused of, but people in Britney's life at this time did not like Sam. So he was her former manager. She's had a bunch of former managers, former assistants, etc. But most of them were interviewed. And what's interesting is that at the beginning, when Sam was her manager, right after they met, 2 things is, one, she called a lot of people that were interviewed and started off their, relationship by calling them and saying, I need your help. And to me, that just signals where her mental health was, where her life was. She was not in a good place for a very, very long time. And it's really sad that basically just the general fame that she had really caused so many problems. And then add the conservatorship and an abusive father to that. I mean, no wonder she is who she is today. It's crazy. So, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. One, I think it's interesting that she continually calls people up outside of her family and asks for their help. And 2, what's really interesting is that she referred to Sam at first as a sometimes friend, someone who got her groceries. But then somehow something shifted, and Sam was basically running her life. A lot of people in the documentary were saying that they didn't like Sam and they didn't like his role in her life, and that she really wasn't doing anything without him or apart from him or without consent, I guess. And there were just a few comments that Sam noted that goes back to what I was just saying about calling people outside of her family, that was really troubling to him. Britney would allude to having a bad home life, which I think most people knew, especially if they were someone that she called up and said, hey, I need your help. She would say things like, my family isn't like your family, it's different, my life is different, my family's different. Just kind of weird things like that, but no one in the documentary gave specifics. No one said that she gave specifics even. Besides saying, I was someone that she confided in, etc. But no one said, oh, there was this incident, there was this one thing that her parents did, there was this one thing that Jamie, her father, did. And the only really information I get, besides her family just being toxic throughout the conservatorship, is that her parents divorced in 2002, and Britney was close to her mom before the end of the conservatorship, before recently. So the conservatorship started in 2008. From what the documentary said, there were good years with her and her mom, But then there was just a breaking point. And when, I'm assuming from what I've read and what I've heard, when she kind of had the breaking point with her dad, her mom kind of was included in that as well. And what I've heard from other sources, not the specific documentary, is that Lynn Spears, Britney's mom, just didn't stand up for her. She was also someone that was taking money. She was the one that was more involved with Britney's career and her life. And Britney's old assistant, Felicia Collada, she even said, she wasn't going to comment on Jamie specifically, but she did say he was rarely there. It was almost always Lynn and Britney. And so, to me, I think her mom, Lynn, was taking on the role of the parent while Jamie was doing nothing. And then when Jamie saw what kind of profit he could get out of this conservatorship and out of Britney in general, then he became involved in the business side, but not the personal side. Oh, also, this made me really mad about Sam Lufty. It was said that he was crushing drugs, putting it in her food, and bragging about it. And what's crazy about that is that as they're, in the documentary, as they're talking about this, they're showing footage of Sam and Britney fighting. And there's one specific scene, actual footage, where Britney's wearing this red top and she is in the car with Sam and she wants to drive her car and is telling Sam to get into the passenger seat. And she's talking in a British accent the whole time. And she's genuinely mad. Like, they're genuinely fighting. You can tell Sam is pissed. But she's using a British accent, and I'm like, I mean, what if he was crushing drugs and putting them in her food and making her insane? What if half of the conservatorship forming and being created was because he had her drugged half the time? I mean, of course he denies it, and he said that, she always had to take drug tests, which she does confirm in court documents when she was speaking to a judge. But, I mean, couldn't he cheat that really easily? I don't know. It's interesting to me because, another point is that her father didn't want her on drugs, on Adderall specifically, stimulants, but then also wanted her to be on it for tours and stage performances, etc. So, I mean, that was never resolved and there's a court document to prove it, but the court document literally says this was never resolved. But it's just really interesting. I would like to know what drug she's on, or what she was on, because I feel like wouldn't that contribute to this quote-unquote mental break that is the reason why she started the conservatorship or was forced into it? I don't know. So many questions, but what's hard is that this is all like hearsay, and it is TMZ, and it's celebrity gossip and celebrity drama, and I don't think we would actually know the truth until we talk to Britney about each specific step. Britney was not actually in this documentary. She wasn't interviewed. They only used past interviews, past footage, archived footage to kind of show her side of the story, her comments, how she was feeling at certain times. I wrote gasp in my notes when we were talking about Sam and the drugs, because that's egregious. I can't even go there. So another interesting fact about Sam is that he sued Lynn Spears for defamation based on her account of his involvement in Britney's mental break. So I think maybe it was the inner circle, the family, that was blaming Sam, and then that just kind of came out in papers and in news and just kind of in the drama that surrounded her. So I think he sued because it became such a big deal and such a bad reputation kind of thing for him. But that's my speculation. Here is when the Blackout album came out. This album is said to be a woman hunted and often on the run. And this documentary was saying that kind of foreshadows the darker turn that was to come. And even though this album was the biggest of her career, she was clearly just someone who needed help, in quotes. And I mean, the paparazzi was still crazy. And at this point, she would speed, run red lights, do anything to get away from from the paparazzi. And they would speed as well. And so obviously that gives concerns to, 1, her safety, 2, her view of her safety, 3, that obviously is going to cause problems to someone's mental health. If you're being chased down by paparazzi, like in their cars, on foot, in restaurants, in the grocery store, everywhere, and this had, at this point, had been going on for about a decade. So it's really hard to imagine a scenario in which she's fine. And I think we still talk about this kind of stuff today with child stars. You know, if you think about Lindsay Lohan, Amanda Bynes, those kind of people that came from Disney, Nickelodeon. Britney should be kind of included in that. She's a singer and a performer before she was an actress. When you grow up in the industry, it's different than when you become famous as an adult. I'm not even famous, so I don't know what I'm talking about, but I think in general, it's really easy to understand the kind of trauma that would come with growing up in that industry, and also just growing up as a pop star where you're like considered America's sweetheart. You are sexualized from a really young age. You are making millions of dollars at 16 years old. All of that is obviously going to be really, really hard on a person in terms of mental health and just dealing with fame, adjusting to fame, adjusting to the fortune, and of course, add in the conservatorship. In 2008, she locked herself in a room and wouldn't give up her kids for Kevin's court-appointed time with the kids. So at this point, Kevin had gotten full custody of the kids, but she had visiting rights. So she would see them occasionally, and she, in an interview, even said, of course, she was going through a hard time as a mother who just lost custody with her two kids. And I think, you know, in real life, during this time, we really looked past that and just was like, oh, well, she's crazy. I mean, wouldn't any mom be so upset and torn with this custody decision? I mean, I would be, and I'm not even a mom. Like, I just don't think we really appreciated all of the circumstances that would put anyone in a stressed mental state, much less a celebrity. Okay, I know I hit on that a bunch. I'll move on. So, again, divorce was messy. Federline was getting ruined by the media, but he got the kids. She had a very crazy image. And so she was put in a mental hospital for the first time in 2008. And a few days later, there was a new figure on the Spears team named Lewis Taylor. So she was basically the spokesperson for the Spears family. And she went on the Today Show as this spokesperson. So this was kind of the first time that someone had spoken out for the Spears family. So like as one unit and kind of as like somewhat of a publicist. That was kind of the first time that had happened. So she goes on this show, and I mean, of course, she's like, you know, they don't know the Spears family. They don't know what goes on. And that is fair. But then she goes on to say, Jamie goes to work every day as a personal chef, asking the Lord to give him the strength to honor the people he works for in the midst of circumstances. And Lynn is a mother who is brokenhearted just because she is apart from her daughter, and she loves her daughter so much. In my notes, I put, what does God have to do with him being a chef? I mean, it was just weird. It was a weird interview, but I mean, obviously it was scripted and she kept bringing in God and the Lord, and it was just kind of weird. But again, that was just kind of the first time they used a spokesperson, I guess, to represent the Spears family. So, I mean, I'm sure she did some damage control, you know, for 2008. After Britney was released from the hospital, Jamie petitioned for a conservatorship, a temporary conservatorship. The court placed Britney under this contemporary conservatorship on February 1st of 2008. So, if you guys don't know, because I didn't before this whole thing, a conservatorship is a court case where a judge appoints a responsible person or organization to care for another adult who cannot care for himself or herself or manage his or her own finances. So, there's an attorney that's being interviewed in this documentary, and he said that he has been a part of many conservatorship hearings, and not one of the ones that he has been appointed to, because attorneys volunteer, but they're not free, but they volunteer to maybe be appointed to be a conservatee's lawyer. So he said that not one of the cases that he has been appointed to involved a conservatee the person that is being put under the conservatorship, who did have a job, a person who was mentally capable of working. So for Britney to literally be a billionaire and to be being put under a conservatorship was odd. Basically, some lawyers, some attorneys, some people in the court system have referred to a conservatorship as a tantamount to a civil death. And for Britney, it was hard because everyone that was involved was getting paid by Britney Spears. These people that worked within the conservatorship probably didn't want to step on Jamie's toes by agreeing with Britney or helping her out of this conservatorship or supporting her to get out of it, or even to provide her own counsel because she legally couldn't. They probably didn't want to piss off the person writing their paychecks, especially because their paychecks were like $3 million. So that is what I consider the corrupt nature of the conservatorship. Jamie was the sole conservator over the person, aka Britney, but had to share estate with court-appointed attorney Andrew Wallet, who was then being paid by Jamie. And mind you, everything that Jamie got was through Britney. So he basically became the business owner of Britney as a person. And so he basically got all of her profits. He controlled everything. People called Jamie intimidating and said you don't want to mess with him when he's angry. And he was kind of acting as a bouncer to Britney's life. Financially, family-wise, whoever, deciding who came into her life, who could come to her house at certain times, who she could hang out with. And what's crazy is that this conservatorship was put in place, and she was evaluated mentally. This was put into place under orders related to dementia placement on her initial intake and medical form for the conservatorship. So whoever evaluated her, he said she had dementia, but she was still working. She's fine on tour, physically. She's still with it. I don't understand it, and I think that was what was, reiterated in the documentary, is that it doesn't make sense. But the court went for it. So Larry Rudolph was interviewed. He was Britney's longtime manager. In 1996, he was her attorney and then grew into her manager, but was fired in 2007. So Jamie brought him back during the conservatorship, and he's been Britney's manager ever since. He claims he doesn't know what went on with the conservatorship ever, only knew what was happening with work. Almost everyone said this, especially the attorneys involved, and it's bullshit. Obviously, you know what's happening within the conservatorship. Maybe you don't know every legal detail, but you're an attorney, and then her manager. Jamie controls all of her money. How do you get paid? Through Jamie. How do you run her business? Through Jamie. Jamie was basically Britney at this point, financially and business-wise. So it's ridiculous that people claim they didn't know anything about it. Anyway, there are a few other people in here that grew close to Britney but were either shunned or kicked out or just not allowed to see Britney for various reasons, but mostly because of the conservatorship. So Jamie was basically saying, you can't see Britney, you can't see them. And there were a few people that she called to try and get her own counsel. Many times she went to court and she said, I do not want my dad to be the conservator. I want to be an independent. I understand the concept of a conservatorship, and I am basically clear of mind to say what I want. That's what she continually said. The judge said she couldn't legally have her own counsel, and so this attorney, Adam Streisand, that tried to help her, couldn't help her, couldn't be her attorney legally, so he had to walk away. And I think that's really where the court becomes the problem, is that she continually says, just give me my right to counsel. Just my right to counsel. If I'm crazy, Jamie will still win. But I want to pick who becomes my attorney, not someone who the court of California chooses, not who my dad chooses, who I choose. And she legally couldn't even do that. Which, how? That makes no sense to me. I understand that the conservatorship is a rare circumstance, and as one of the attorneys said, we want to exhaust all options before going to a conservatorship. That's what the court wants. That's what every attorney wants. But in this case, Sam Ingham was the attorney who was appointed to Britney, and she just had to deal with it. It's like a basic civil right to be able to attain your own counsel. But, I mean, and I understand that the conservatorship waives a lot of those rights for certain reasons, and that's what it's there for. But still, if she's of sound mind, she should be able to decide that. But I guess because the person who evaluated her said she wasn't of sound mind, because he said that she had dementia, which shouldn't you get, like, multiple evaluations for this, like, very serious type of court ruling? I don't know. So anyway, it was kind of contradictory because her medical file said she had dementia and, like, wouldn't be able to work. But she was. She was going on tour. She was being forced to work all the time. She was doing a bunch of different things, mostly against her will. So it was kind of contradictory, but no one could really do anything about it. Basically, she just started living like she was constantly trying to use other people's phones to contact people, to have a little bit of freedom. On one of her tours, there is live video footage of her talking to the audience, her own audience that, like, paid to be there and to hear her perform and sing. And she's saying, me talking in this microphone just to you guys feels illegal. Because she was that restricted. She couldn't say or do anything that she wanted. She was told what to do and what to say and who to be. She didn't even get to keep all that money. Like, it was just going straight to her dad. And it's just really upsetting when you watch this documentary to see that live footage. Like, what kind of life must that be to literally have no individual autonomy? I mean, of any sense of the word. And it's just so sad because she couldn't even decide how often she saw her kids or how much time she could spend with them. And she kept asking for help. And what's really interesting to me is that the journalist, Jenny, literally went to Sam and Adnan, who were in LA when she was visiting LA, and they had a conversation and they were like, you have to help us. So she literally went to the hotel that Britney, where she was staying, went to the roof, pretended to be a guest, side-eyed Britney to go to the bathroom because, mind you, they knew each other from doing the Rolling Stone. And Jenny got her to sign a document that said she wanted new counsel. And it was a literal secret. She had to sign it in secret in the bathroom. And then the court denied it because the initial conservatorship said she couldn't have her own counsel, and because they couldn't prove it was her signature. I'm like, that's ridiculous. This court system is so messed up. And I don't understand how it, like, went on this long with people just being like, oh, well, you know, that's how it works. Like, who was this judge? Who were all of these judges? I'm, like, very concerned. I kind of want to, like, do more research on the actual legal stuff on it. But if you want, like, legal jargon and actual legalese, please just go watch the documentary because that's not my forte. So in early 2009, Jamie asked for the temporary conservatorship to be permanent, and this passed. He just had even more control over Britney's personal finances, and he could pursue professional opportunities for Britney himself. So basically force her to work, and he did. Whew. The circus tour was a mess. People that were there said it was actually a mess. It was not good for her mental health. She was not doing well, and she was forced to keep doing this. Meanwhile, the conservatorship was claiming that they had successfully added financial growth and stability to her life, basically saying she's fine. And basically, Jamie would threaten her with never seeing her kids again if she didn't follow the conservatorship and work and, you know, do all these things, etc. So there was at one point a co-conservator, which was Jason Trawick, Britney's fiance, in 2011. But then eventually they broke up, and then Jamie became sole conservator again. Oh, this is horrible. In 2011, when she was denied at the end of the conservatorship, there is direct evidence that her medications were being increased. The ones she likes, the ones that made her feel better, would be increased if she worked. So there were also different doses on work days versus non-work days. So Jamie got to decide and leverage her mental health for whatever he wanted. That's sick. This is sick. It's just so sad. And then this whole like contradiction about Jamie wanting her to be on stimulants but not wanting her to be on stimulants like was just never resolved. So he just really got to decide on a whim when she got to be on crazy drugs. Like when she got to feel better, when she got to feel worse. He just got to decide that blanketly and everyone was fine with it except Britney, obviously. Ugh. So in 2015, Piece of Me started. It was a show in Vegas that culminated into the world tour Piece of Me, and her inner circle was very small. I'm just going to kind of end on these stats. In 2017 to 2018, so just 1 year, Britney earned $34 million. Her net worth was estimated at $59 million. Jamie's earnings from 2013 to 2018, $2.1 million from tour revenues, plus a $16,000 per month salary. He paid Britney $8,000 per month allowance. That was all she got. From all of that, that was all she got. In 2019, this is when people started questioning, is she okay? Fans, the internet really were speculating on the video she was posting. They were wondering what's going on in the conservatorship because she's saying she's fine, but she doesn't look fine. Her Instagram videos don't look fine. And this is when the hashtag Free Britney culminated. Kevin put a restraining order against Jamie Spears with his kids. So Kevin said, Jamie, you cannot legally come near my kids because there was an altercation. A door was knocked down. Not many people in the documentary would talk about it. And this altercation put the children, in quotes, in fear of their safety. So this is when I think Jamie was just getting really bad, really, really bad, and people were starting to see it and talk about it. Here, this is in 2019, Britney refused to work. She said, I'm just not going to do it. And in 2021, this is when she addressed the court. This was going around the internet in 2021 very rapidly, and the Free Britney hashtag was, super trending. It was one of the biggest hashtags that had been used. And she said, the control Jamie had over someone as powerful as me, 100,000% he loved it. I am traumatized. I'm not happy. I cry every day. I want to end my conservatorship. On June 30th, 2021, the judge denied Britney's request to have her father removed from the conservatorship. On July 6th, Sam Ingham resigned. He made nearly $3 million over the course of the conservatorship. He says she never asked to end the conservatorship, which is false, and there's documentation to prove it. On July 14th, Matthew Rosengard became Britney's new attorney and immediately filed for removal of Jamie Spears as conservator. On September 7th, Jamie Spears formally asked to be removed as conservator and for the conservatorship to end. On November 12th, the court ruled to terminate the conservatorship, freeing Britney after 13 years. I don't understand. And, I'm so happy she's free. She's just living her life. She is engaged and pregnant as of, I think, this week she announced it. And great for her. Her Instagram videos are a little whack. But this documentary really hit on the fact that the court didn't help her. And that even though, even in light of this great thing, it's only because Jamie resigned. Because he decided to, I guess, not be crazy anymore. Oh, it's just infuriating. Anyway, I know this was a lot of information. I know this was a lot of just kind of stats and stuff. But that's kind of what a documentary is. It's real life, and it's the facts, and it's the statistics, and it's the legal documents, and it's the real story behind the Britney Spears. And I really, really liked it. I would recommend you all go and watch it. I think you might be able to understand it better if you go watch it, because the legalese are, not my forte, and I don't think I probably explained them that well. I think this was very accurate to the insight on Britney's life and just kind of as close of an accurate depiction of it as we can get. And I thought it was produced really well. It was edited really well. The sound was really good. Really emphasized the drama. And I think you all should go watch it. Even if you don't like pop culture, even if you don't like Britney Spears, this was really interesting to watch. And I think it's a good way to educate yourself and just kind of learn more about other people in the world around you. Thank you guys for listening. I hope you like this episode. And I will be covering more documentaries in the future. And next week we will be back to regular scheduled programming with a really good film that I really love. Like, subscribe, leave a review, DM me, whatever you want to do. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Now if you run into a 5'2" covered with fur, diamond rings and all those things, bet your life it isn't her. Could she love?